Here we are. It is week one. We've got our first game already in the books, a Thursday night thriller between Baltimore and Kansas City. Mike Giardi alongside Will Parkinson, the All 32 pod. As we get, we're just so fired up. I have so much energy for this. Stayed up till midnight. You know me, I don't like to stay up that late, but when it's football, I'm all good. A fantastic game. So we've got that to get into. We're going to preview some of the other games. Will, just other thoughts about what's going on during the NFL this week?
Yeah, no, like last night was fantastic. Great start. Great to have the NFL season back. Referees, exciting plays, thrillers, the whole 9 yards. We got everything last night, rain delays, etc. So everything excited to get into this one, our first Sunday, preview pod. And obviously we're going to talk a little Jalen Ramsey and, obviously talk about last night's game.
Hey, a reminder, the All 32 podcast brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. And Game Time, best tickets, best prices to get you in to see any event you want. Absolutely two things that we lean on here, Will and I do, because they're that good, and you should want them too. So we mentioned the game, and I guess before we even get into the game, I almost lost my mind in the first quarter. I understand the league saying, we want to correct the illegal formations. We don't want to have tackles lined up in the backfield. Way too many calls. Like, this is your signature event. It's your first game. The world is ready for you. And you're doing what? You're going to call how many flags? And then, quite frankly, even as the game went on and they stopped calling it, you're looking at it going, boy, it doesn't feel like it was too much different than it was in the first quarter. You just now decided not to call it. I just have this fear that that's what this weekend and maybe the next couple are going to look like. And I'm not here to see those guys make that call.
Yeah, a couple of different things. You mentioned that, look, we know, respectfully, the teams that are the Chiefs or, people at the Yankees used to get these calls. The Patriots obviously got them. And it always happens with teams that are good, right? For sure. But it does feel like there's always a special whistle for the Chiefs. I thought last night was no difference. I thought the Spagnuolo letting him call a timeout there.
Unbelievable.
And that's not a bias.
Yeah.
Ticky-tack, was it pass interference? Was not. I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And they got away with it. It was a pretty big call, obviously. And it's not on the refs to account for if Andy Reid's in shape enough to – I love Andy, but you know what I mean? Like, at the end of the day, that's not their problem. The Stanley couple, there's the four calls, I believe I think four of them were on Stanley.
Yeah.
He said, I think they're making an example out of me. They probably were. The Ravens are an organization that probably feels like they usually get the calls, and they weren't getting them last night. And it just feels like I understand the reason they have the rule, but Jawan Taylor's like 99% of the reason, other than him and Lane Johnson have been like the biggest culprits of this for the last 24 months in specific, where people have really pointed it out. It's just crazy to me that Jawan Taylor is the reason this rule kind of got so much publicity last year. And it was Thursday Night Football, week one last year against the Lions. He did it like 800 times last night and it didn't get called off. So at some point, I just think the biggest thing with the refs, and this is what I'm going to say on the rest of the season, you'll hear me say it over and over. If it's consistent, even if it's garbage, I'm okay with it because at least it's coming. The inconsistency on roughing the passer, pass interference, one pass interference that was Juju blocking downfield wasn't, but then Rashad Bateman was, the illegal formations. I think people are just asking for consistency, and the product has already gotten dwindled down a little bit between kickoff, the commercials, the flags. Don't make it worse. And then, this always happens week one. We usually see in the preseason, though, Mike, don't you feel like, and this is weird that we saw it week one. Normally, the preseason, it's an egregious, and then week one happens. You're like, oh, I forgot that rule even existed.
Right. Well, I mean, Patriots had to deal with it in their preseason finale. Chuks Okorafor, I think, got called 3 times. I think Nwenu got called once for the illegal formation. There was a big story locally about, oh my God, they've what's going on? What are they being taught there? And it's just, again, I'm not here to see the refs. No, not at all. I'd rather let them err on the side of let them play more, let there be a little bit more contact, like on some of the downfield stuff or what have you, than to have flag after flag after flag. I'm over it already. I'm already over it. As for the game itself, Kansas City gets the win 27-20. They get it they avoid going to overtime or maybe having the Ravens go for 2 by the tip of Isaiah Likely's toe. Likely had a monster game, the tight end out of Coastal Carolina in year 3, who I absolutely loved coming out and has continued to make me look good in that regard. But I want to start with the Ravens, Will, because they are my Super Bowl pick. And you were texting me last night. Oh, I don't know. Didn't you say if they don't get it done this year, you're not allowed to pick them again? I'm not all that concerned about it. Look, they have problems on the right side of their offensive line. There's no question about it. And look, unfortunate circumstances. The offensive line coach passed away this summer. So, they're sort of adjusting on the fly there. Some young players, some new players, 3 of their 5 guys are playing for different, that started last year, are playing for different teams. But I just trust in the development that they have over there and the coaching to figure that out. So it may look rugged in the short term, but I think in the long term, they have a tendency to figure it out. And they're also one of those teams that wouldn't be afraid to get aggressive, say week 6 or something, as you get closer to the trade deadline. If they felt like, look, we just need to shore up this spot. We got to go do something to shore up this spot. I think that's a brain trust that's shown they're willing to do that. I guess the other thing that I would look at from the game is Lamar Jackson's usage. 273 yards passing, 122 yards rushing. You and I were talking beforehand. He took a lot of contact yesterday, and some of it was of his own doing. He lowered shoulders and tried to finish runs, which I appreciate the trying to send a message to both the Chiefs and his teammates. Like, I know how last year ended to these guys, and I'm all in. You're going to get the best of me. He's lost weight on purpose because he felt like he was fat and slow last year, which is ridiculous. He's neither fat nor slow. And he looked faster last night, but his body's not built to absorb that. One of the great things that he did for years and years was avoid sort of that contact. He'd get this wiggly run, 8, 9, 10 yards, get the first down, duck out of bounds. Mahomes does that, right? Mahomes will, not that he's nearly the same athlete that Lamar is, but he'd duck out of bounds before he gets that big hit and then maybe flop when he went out of bounds. But that's going to be something that I think they're going to have to monitor. I would imagine that the meetings today going into next week and the meetings with Lamar will be like, look, we appreciate it. You're a baller, but it's a long, long season. And if we're going to do anything, we need you upright and at your best come January.
Yeah, a couple of things there. I'm going to sound like I'm down on the Ravens for a couple of reasons, but I also don't think it's outlandish. I think there are things they can improve on throughout the year. New defensive coordinator, so there was always going to be a bit of an adjustment there. We saw one huge coverage bust that led to an Xavier Worthy touchdown. I feel like I don't think I took into account just how much of a career year a lot of those guys had in Baltimore last year from a defensive perspective, along with Mike McDonald. I think a lot of those guys are still awesome football players. Matt Abuke had an incredible year. Jadeveon Clowney is 9, 10 sacks. That he's a great player. He's just never been that guy in terms of sack production. Geno Stone, the 7 picks, right? Like led the league, and then obviously leaves. Marcus Williams is healthy now. Kyle Hamilton another year. Marlon Humphrey is a year older. I'm curious to see what he's going to look like as time goes on. I just feel like that defense is going to be really good. I don't know if it's going to be top 2 or 3 in the league. I think might be more like 6 or 7, and that's not, by the way, to say they're not going to be a great unit.
Right.
Justin Tucker missing a kick last night felt weird, and again, he's missed like last year. I felt like he was still really good. You still take him over like 28 of the 32 kickers, no matter what, without even thinking. That was always in 100% automatic part of their game. And it's just something to monitor throughout the year. Is kickers are weird. Connor Rogers has made this point, and I think it's a great example. They're like relievers, and Justin Tucker's been like Mariano Rivera for a long time. I'm just curious I'm just pointing it out there. I'm just curious if there's any type of decline in terms of Tucker at all throughout the year. It will affect them. He's automatic from like 65 in. So again, weird last night, but the defense was still awesome. Look, you hold Mahomes at home to 27 points and force some turnovers, hit him a bunch. Offensively, I thought Lamar was really good, but the A dot going into the middle of the third quarter was 1 or under crazy. 1, I believe. Zay Flowers looks explosive, looks awesome, but it's a lot of bubble screens. It's a lot of stuff. And again, I know that's part of his game, but it felt like they're taking deep post shots to Isaiah Likely, again, who played great. It's not taking anything away from him. It just felt like Lamar felt really good, but a little wonky at times. And just, they don't feel like they have that one field stretching big time player that can then open up stuff in that intermediate, because they're so like around the line of scrimmage. And I can't tell if Todd Monken was just protecting Lamar and protecting against that offensive line a bit. That could have been it. And maybe next week we'll see a totally different Ravens team and they'll go put up 50 points and I'll look like an ass. But again, I think you mentioned it. The Ravens, I think, look good. They don't look quite as awesome. And again, it's against the Chiefs. So week 1, I'm not
in Kansas City.
In Kansas City, all those are fair. I just was a little concerned there. And then the only last thing, and I mentioned on our last pod, the Derrick Henry thing is going to be interesting. Obviously, touchdown, first drive. He had that couple, I think it was the fourth down and one other run. You're like, there it is. Then a lot of the other times it was like that looked a little Adrian Peterson in Washington and Le'Veon Bell with the Jets, and just a little bit like doesn't have the same juice.
Yeah.
Just something to monitor again with the Ravens. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of changes there, so there's just something to monitor with them.
That's a great point about Henry, because he obviously finished some runs, and that's sort of what he's there for. Flip side is they looked a lot more explosive when Justice Hill was on the field. So
I know, by the way, Justice Hill got a lot of crap for those two plays. He blocked Chris Jones on both those. So
yes,
good for him,
he did. Like, first of all, what sort of design would you leave him alone against Chris Jones? He did the job against Chris Jones. My last point on the Ravens. Look, it shouldn't have come down to the toe. He had likely open in the back corner, overthrew him, nearly got likely killed, and then he had Zay Flowers. And granted he was on the move a little bit, and I think he and Zay were not necessarily on the same page as to where Zay was settling and where he was throwing. But like, you're the two-time MVP. You got to make one of those throws. He didn't. That makes a phenomenal play on the toe out of bounds. But again, just maybe you don't even get to that point. Maybe we're not even talking about the toe. Maybe we're talking about the Ravens scoring the touchdown play or two prior, going for two, getting it. And
I was going to say they were going for two. No.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's horrible. I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to play for overtime either.
No, not early in the season.
Absolutely. What did you think about the Chiefs? Because obviously, good. Look, this is a great way to start the season. You beat the team that was the best team in the regular season last year. You looked a little bit more explosive last night, but I think we're already overreacting to what we saw.
We're overreacting. I didn't think they ran the ball particularly well.
No.
They didn't really try, frankly, but when they didn't look awesome. I thought it was like Pacheco was fine. He had a couple plays. He had the one drop, but he had a couple, the nice screen play. Obviously, the touchdown, which I'm not sure why that wasn't called dead, but it doesn't really matter. Look, I think the Chiefs are going to be awesome. I think I had them as the 1 seed, if I'm not mistaken. I think you had them as either the 1 or the 2.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Schrager and every single person under the sun's picked the Chiefs to win the title. Chiefs or Ravens pretty much been the title pick from, either one. So I get it. And Mahomes was good last night. I didn't think he was actually that good. The interception was horrible, and that should have led to 7 points. That you can't make the mistake. I don't care who you are. Over the middle of the field, like your arm's strong, buddy, but
yeah,
you're not gonna feel it. You can't. Rokon was just sitting there, and he got very lucky, obviously, with the one he caught. That actually almost helped them ice the game. That he caught that one that got batted down. Xavier Worthy was explosive. I think that's what you'll see him do. I think we're overreacting a bit with Xavier Worthy. I mean, the one play is a wide open touchdown, and the reverse was special. I mean, that's special speed, special blocking, pursuit angles.
Also unscouted look there too. Like just something, now teams look, and not that Andy and they won't come up with something off that or, a different variation of it, but kind of caught the Ravens not ill prepared for something like that.
I guess and I don't want to harp on the Chiefs too much because I think we just kind of know what they are. The Ravens were more of the kind of, let's see what they are going in this game. My only other thought on the Chiefs is like, they're going to be awesome. I mentioned this in the last, but I think what makes them special is that their defense, McDuffie, Chris Jones, in particular, I think were their 2 best defensive players, in my opinion. When they let those guys go out and make plays and Spags is drawing it up, it kind of puts a little bit of fear in you. And then they run the football really well. And Mahomes can just dice you up and down. Third down, him and Kelsey. Rashee Rice was awesome last night. Again, you get the news he's not going to be suspended this year, which is interesting to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
But, there's all that. Andy Reid, like the Chiefs looked awesome. They kind of are what you expected them to be in this iteration of this Chiefs dynasty, which is great defense. They're physical. And Mahomes is Mahomes. The one guy I would say that I was concerned about and coming off an injury, Nick Bolton's one of the better players in the league. He did not have a good night last night, to say the least. Just curious. Again, a guy that it's not overreacting. It's just curious what he's going to look like the next 3 or 4 weeks. Again, coming off the injury. Isaiah likely got him more than a few times last night and not so good fashion. And again, I keep reiterating it. What makes this Chiefs team special and what will get them to another three-peat will be this defense more than anything. And they do need Nick Bolton to be good because he's a key in that middle. So, again, not too much with the Chiefs. I just one guy on each side, Tucker and Bolton, who are special players, both had weird moments last night. We were like, ooh, that was What
Okay,
was that?
something to pay attention. I'll give you a quick wrap on that. Leo Chenal did a terrific job for them. They pointed him out on the broadcast. They were putting him in the A gap, and then he was, he was spying on Lamar. And look, spying on Lamar is not an easy thing to do. But Lamar had obviously 122 yards rushing, but didn't break one of those crazy runs like I thought he was all over the field last night. And Jalen Watson as the opposite corner to Trent McDuffie. Without L'Jarius Sneed, they needed someone to step up. Watson gets the first crack at it and had a couple really nice plays last night. That late breakup of a pass down the sideline was absolutely gorgeous. Hey, guess what? Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy app with over 5 million active members. Prize Pick is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on a 2 to 6 player stat projection and watch the winnings roll in. I've already won some money, and we're going to give you some picks later on. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? Of course, you got to be smart, but if you got it, don't be afraid to put it out there. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the Prize Pick app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. The code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play 5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's get into it, Will. Breaking down the rest of the week 1 slate, although we will save the Monday Nighter for our taping on Monday. And you're going to be excited about that one. I know you've logged about 72 hours already previewing 49ers and Jets. But let's start with the game Friday night in Brazil, Green Bay versus the Eagles. Eagles are favored by 2.5 points in this one. I have no idea why we're playing in Brazil. I mean, I know why we're playing in Brazil, but they shouldn't be playing in Brazil. That's neither here nor there. I can't control that. The league is greedy, and they're going to do what they want to do. Guys aren't all that psyched about it. For me, the thing that jumps out about this game is the Eagles obviously changed coordinators, both offensive and defense, but I'm pointing to the defensive side of it because I thought last year defensively, when they fell apart 1-6 down the stretch, their defense was wretched. Vic Fangio now in charge. How does his scheme, especially the pass defense, stack up against the Packers pass attack, which over the second half of the season into the postseason was awesome? In particular, they target the slot a lot. Jordan Love will work that. Jaden Reed, like they have players, multiple players they can put in there and thrive with. Meanwhile, Philadelphia could not defend guys out of the slot last year, which is why they drafted Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Cooper's had a tough summer in terms of injury. He's back, but whether he's the guy in there, whether it's Mitchell, who initially I think they wanted to keep outside but have moved inside at times, whether he's in there, they feel like they've gotten better there, but now we have to see it. So I'm really curious to see Matt LaFleur with his system in place and now Jordan Love with a full year under his belt as the starter and those pieces around him that he helped elevate last year, how they fare against a Fangio defense when, again, Philadelphia was they lost their identity on all sides last year, but defensively, there's enough talent there that it shouldn't look like it did at the end of last year.
Yeah, and we'll get to there's a couple of things, a couple Steelers notes to quarterback notes to get to. We'll get to the Steelers game and we'll get to Ramsey at the Dolphins game, so don't you worry, Dolphins fans. My biggest question marks on both sides of the football, or keys going into this game, are the 4 big-time additions, 2 on each side for the Eagles and for the Packers. My biggest things for the Eagles, Bryce Huff. How do they deploy him in this Fangio scheme? Mm-hmm. You know, I talked with Bryce a bunch this week. He's excited to get out there. He's rocking the number 0, dropped the number 47. So swag levels are much higher than they were, here at the Jets. How they deploy him and can they kind of create that pass rush? Can he replicate what Hassan Reddick's been to them the last few years? That's what's made the Eagles defense 2 years ago as special as it was, and last year, obviously, where they struggled on offense. How did they deploy Saquon Barkley? Do they lean heavy on Barkley? Do they ease him in? Are they going to try to save the miles for later in the year? He's obviously on a 3-year deal, 2 of which based on that contract will be the meat of it. Like, how do they deploy him? So that's my question from a Philadelphia Eagles perspective. Green Bay, Josh Jacobs, Xavier McKinney. Last year, you mentioned the pass attack with Green Bay. Aaron Jones, when he came back, we saw them lean on that in the run game in the playoffs, and they ran the ball extremely efficiently. A.J. Dillon gone for the year. What's Josh Jacobs going to look like this year, right? 2 years ago, rushing title. last year, shell of himself, obviously didn't practice a single time until week one. The Raiders, obviously, O-line actually wasn't terrible. He just didn't look
Right.
the same, right? He had a couple of nice moments, but and then Xavier McKinney on defense, new scheme, new defensive coordinator, big time addition. Safety was a problem for them in years past. What does he look like? Because if those are four guys who big money, big expectations, big two franchises who think they might meet in the title game. What are they going to look like on prime time down in Brazil? Week one.
Let's move to Steelers Falcons. You mentioned, because I blew through something we were going to do at the top, Pat Fryermuth gets a contract extension from Pittsburgh.
Russell
Logical.
Wilson is watching on at practice during individual
Yeah.
drills. Bree Pryor of ESPN just reported Justin Fields is throwing. It seems like we might be trending towards a Fields start here. It doesn't feel like Russ is probably going to play. We'll see.
The calf has been an issue. So Pittsburgh is at Atlanta. And my big question on this one is, we didn't see Kirk Cousins in the preseason. He's coming off the Achilles. He's not a young man. I know we're talking about Aaron Rodgers and his Achilles thing. Like, I don't know what that's going to look like. I know that they did a bad job because of their quarterback play and maybe some of Arthur Smith's play calling, and Arthur's not there anymore. Raheem Morris is the head coach, of sort of deploying those weapons, leaning on someone like Bijan Robinson, who shouldn't be getting 12 to 14 touches a game. He should be in the 20s. Kyle Pitts, obviously, that might be a regrettable pick, but he's not. It's not like he's not talented. And then obviously Drake London. So I just, can Cousins hold up to a pretty good rush? Obviously, TJ Watt on one side, Highsmith on the other, Cam Hayward, who got his extension earlier this week, coming up the gut. Like Mike Tomlin, they'll bring it. They always do defensively. So is he mobile enough, and is he in rhythm enough, because he didn't play in the preseason, to be effective? Because look, I mean, there'll probably be as many Pittsburgh fans as there are Atlanta fans for the opener. So I don't know how much of a home field advantage it's going to be. But in my gut, it just tells me, based on the Steelers' issues offensively, especially at the quarterback position, as you mentioned, that this should be Atlanta's game if Cousins is somewhat like the Kirk Cousins that we know.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think I have a similar kind of question on the defensive side of the football. Pittsburgh's had a lot of offensive line issues throughout the preseason, injuries, guys like Broderick Jones just simply playing quite poorly.
Yeah.
And Fields and Russell Wilson, who both hold the ball for an eternity. So whoever's playing quarterback, Matt Judon, Grady Jarrett. Jarrett coming off the injury, a guy who didn't know he had comeback player of the year odds, but I guess that those exist. And Matt Judon, who's obviously not gotten that extension yet that he's looking for. I have this feeling Judon's going to go out and have 3 or 4 sacks, similar to what he did early in 2022, and it's a lot of doing the celebration, the whole thing, and he's going to come out and be like, "Yeah, I know I was playing the good guy after I was the bad cop in New England. Now I'm the good cop. I kind of want to be the bad cop again, and I want my money still."
Yeah.
I have a sneaky feeling that's what we're going to see from Judon on Sunday, and then from a Steelers perspective. What's the running back situation going to look like? I think Jalen Warren's a far better player than Najee Harris is.
Agreed.
But I also think Arthur Smith likes to play the guys that everybody else thinks aren't very good. And it's the Arthur Smith revenge game. Is he going to just pound Najee 30 times into the ground because Warren had the hamstring, and that's what Arthur Smith does? So I'm curious from the running back situation there, because I think if the Steelers are at their best, it's Pickens, it's Warren, it's Freiermuth. It doesn't feel like they're at their best when it's Najee and trying to run the ball into people's backs a million times. Like that's so I'm just curious from that perspective. And then I said, the Atlanta defense, specifically Judon, I know as much as he's played the good cop the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
He was a guy who's getting in-house suspended essentially in New England and got his way out. So bad tackle play, offensive line's banged up, first home game. Judon's always up for the moment. And I'm curious to see what he's going to look like.
All right, let's go to Arizona visiting the Buffalo Bills. And
I'm curious what you're going to say on this game. I'm very curious.
I think this is a great time to catch Buffalo. I think Buffalo's going to struggle in the first half of the season.
Are you high on Arizona? Because nationally, it seems like everybody's high on Arizona, and I simply am confused.
No, I don't think they have enough talent, but I think there are some intriguing parts. Obviously, we're going to see the Kyler Murray to Marvin Harrison. Trey McBride's a terrific football player, had a great year last year. But I just look at Buffalo and see a team that is much like last year. I think it's going to take a little while for them to figure out, especially defensively, what they are because we know what Sean wants them to be, Sean McDermott, but without Micah Hyde, without Jordan Poyer, without Matt Milano, with who knows what you're going to get from Von Miller. Like, there are so many questions about that football team. Damar Hamlin scheduled to start his first game since the night he collapsed on the football field in Cincinnati, which is a great story. Damar Hamlin, not a great safety. Like, so there are weaknesses there. Taylor Rapp was a nice third safety. Now he's like their no doubt top safety at the moment. So I think I can see Kyler Murray going bananas in this game a little bit. I can see Marvin Harrison going bananas. I can see McBride causing all kinds of problems. And then what it's going to come down to, as it usually does with the Bills, is can Josh pull a rabbit out of his hat? I think this game is going to be closer than you expect. And like I said, I just think if you're going to catch Buffalo in Buffalo, this is a good time to do it.
I'm going to zag here. I think this is going to be one of those overreaction. Like the Bills put up 35 points, and everyone's like, "See, Stephon Diggs sucked, and Ken Dorsey sucks, and and Josh is winning. No doubt's winning MVP because Mahomes threw a pick, and Lamar didn't win. So now it's Josh's award to lose." I just feel like everyone's thinking Arizona's going to make it close, which makes me feel like Buffalo's going to win 35-12, and we're going to be like, "Yeah, like are the Bills the favorite in the AFC East? Is Arizona terrible?" Like I don't know why I have this feeling. And again, I'm usually wrong, so don't trust me there. But again, I'd like to see Arizona defensively what they're going to be. I think there's so much focus on offense. I think they'll be a fun, especially fantasy wise, they'll be a fun team. NBA League Pass kind of thing.
Yeah.
What are they defensively? Obviously, defensive coordinator, head coach. They were spunky. They were fiery last year, early in the year. Dealing with Josh Allen week one is no joke. If they come out there and they look really good and they upset Buffalo week one, which is very much a possibility, I'll be feeling a lot different about Arizona than I will if they go out there and get steamrolled and it's like,
yeah.
I don't know. And I guess the only other question I just have is like, can Josh Allen be patient? Last year he came out and was so ready and so amped up and so ready to go, and then 4 turnovers cost them the game in New York. What's he gonna? Can he just play within the offense? Can he play within himself for 4 quarters, lay a good foundation? And how's he look without that star receiver? That'll be my question with the Bills.
Yeah, that's a good one. He's got to be patient because it's going to take a little time to get chemistry with some of those guys, including Keon Coleman, who everybody's been raving about. We'll see what it looks like in the regular season. The Tennessee Titans at the Chicago Bears. The Bears are a lot of people have them as a sort of sliding into playoffs. You and I did not put them there. I just looked at this one and I wrote it down again. Arguably, and I'm referencing the Titans here, the weirdest roster construction of any team in the National Football League this year, adding all these different pieces, adding some aging pieces, overpaying certain guys. Jamal Adams is on their team. Like, Jamal Adams hasn't been good since what, 2019? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that fair?
No, 2020 he was good, and then 2021 it fell apart.
So, and look, they're not depending on him to do a ton, but I'm just saying, like, it's just that they've thrown all these pieces. They traded for Robert Jones just this past week. So now they're trying to integrate him into the system, and it just feels like they lost complete patience there, that it fell apart at the end of last year with Vrabel. They move on to Brian Callahan, and now they're just throwing a bunch of crap at the wall and hoping that it sticks. But when I look at it, I go, what is the plan? Because the roster, the way it's built, it's like there are guys that aren't going to be ready to be what some of the guys are on the roster already. And then you have some guys like Hopkins, who was great last year, but injured and kind of past his prime. I have no idea what to expect from the Titans. When we did our first preview, the first time I went through the schedule, I had them like 3-14. And I was like, they're not a 3-14 team. But as I was going game to game to game, I'm like, oh, they're coming off this game. This team's coming here. They're on the road. Like, I have no idea what to expect. And I think the Will Levis, I like some parts of Will Levis, but I think by and large last year wasn't very good. So, like, I don't know. We could be in week 4 or 5 and them talking about like, oh crap, we need a quarterback, and we're moving on to Mason Rudolph for the rest of the year.
Yeah. So, a couple things. The Titan, I think this is a must-win for the Bears. Home opener. I think the cheapest ticket I saw on StubHub last night was $294 for like nosebleed, upper level. Again, to be expected, but Caleb's a lot of pressure at home. Hard Knocks. I experienced it last year with the Jets. Very different situation, but a QB needy franchise that has their savior. They invested a lot in the skill positions and flawed team, but like we got this. Hard Knocks, and there's that bump. Tennessee, I don't think is very good. Another team that people are high on, and maybe I'm off base. I don't feel good about them at all. I actually think they're more of a
Can't get
6
there.
win. Can't get there. And again, me and you will probably be wrong. Arizona and Tennessee will probably be the 4 and 5 seeds.
Right.
But just for the Bears, it's keep Caleb in the sense that like make sure he's like good with like I could take a 6-yard hitch route here and just take up a first down and try to let him play a little bit within himself and like let the shackles off at some points, but try to keep him in check there. Belichick was pretty hard on Caleb last night, which is to be expected, but he did draft Mac Jones and think he was the savior. So, it is what it is. Tennessee wise, you mentioned Levis. I'm just curious the discipline and how this team's coached. Brian Callahan had really interesting, I thought really awesome comments around EPA per play, around things like, just plans on offense, plans on defense, things of that nature. Vrabel was really good with discipline. I felt like really good in when to go for it, when not to go for it, when to kick, when to push buttons the right way. I just think from a coaching perspective, I'm really high on Callahan. I think he's going to be awesome. We haven't seen it. So coaching from a Tennessee perspective and from Chicago, it's hard to just not say this is all about Caleb. And I just truly feel like it is a must-win game because when you have so much optimism, you kind of got to grab it. And you have they have the city by the balls a little bit, and you got to grab it if you're the Bears. And so, we'll see what happens on Sunday.
All right, let's go to the New England Patriots, who most people think are the worst or the second worst team in the league, at Cincinnati. A lot of weird stuff coming out of Cincinnati. All of a sudden,
Higgins not practiced.
Yeah, T. Higgins tweaked the hamstring. Zach Taylor said, we'll see about Sunday. Jamar Chase, we know the hold in, hold out thing going on. Also got a we'll see on that as well. Obviously, if those two guys are not playing or are limited, I think the
Andre
odds,
Yochevich.
yeah, the odds went from the Bengals by 8.5 to 7.5. I don't know.
Probably will drop another point if that's the case.
I would think so. But for me, when you get past that, looking at the Patriots and just saying Jacoby Brissett and that offensive line, the Patriots, City So, their starting guard, did not practice all week, hasn't practiced since the Commanders game when he hurt his Achilles/ankle. Says it's getting better, but again, did not practice. Vidarian Lowe, who's been their starting left tackle until 2 weeks ago, pulled an oblique muscle. He told me earlier in the week, didn't think he was going to play. Wasn't very optimistic, but he has done some stuff in practice. So who knows? Maybe he's healing faster here in these last 48 hours, and he's still got a chance. But that offensive line was a question mark going into the spring and summer. It remains a giant question mark going into the opener. Obviously, Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, two really good pass rushing pieces. Mike Hilton blitzing. Does Jacoby Brissett, as a veteran, can he recognize that? Can he diagnose? Can he get rid of the ball quickly? Louis Anarumo is going to have a ton of stuff coming out in this game for the opener. So I just wonder if the Patriots, just based on how the offense has performed this summer, if they're ready for prime time here.
So just a couple quick updates. As recording, Jamal Adams is out on Sunday. Pat Freiermuth's extension, 4 years, $48 million. Which would put him in about like the 7th or 8th highest paid tight end. So just a couple of numbers there. Actually, Freiermuth got more than I expected. But this game kind of comes down to two things for me. What's Joe Burrow wrist look like, and just how's he holding up? Is he tentative at all? Just super tough dude. We know that. With Chase, without Chase, with Higgins, without Higgins, leaning on Andre Yochevich and company. He's played with my brother at Princeton, so I like to shout those guys out. But man, like, just what's Joe Burrow look like? That's an injury we just don't. It's not wrist injuries aren't that common, and they're especially not common in quarterbacks like that. When it comes to New England, I said coaching before with Brian Callahan. You mentioned the quarterback and the offensive line. I think that's obviously the number one story. What's a Gerard Mayo coach team going to look like on Sunday?
No
right?
clue.
Like I don't think any of us have any idea. Are we looking at a Belichick, hard-nosed, disciplined team, exotic defense, really awesome? probably going to pound the football, a lot of play action, quick game, like probably, but I don't know. So I guess from my perspective, I think the number one thing coming out of this is Joe Burrow. How healthy is he? More than anything. And number two, like for the Patriots perspective, what kind of coach team are you going to be? It's only 1 week, but on the road, big test, big time underdogs. I don't know. They go out there and shock the Bengals and win 17-14, and like you're like, ooh, are they maybe a spunky 6-win team as opposed to a
Right.
2-win team? Like that'll be just really interesting. And then if they do win or keep it really close, does it make you feel more comfortable to play Drake May earlier than later? I'm also curious, how does the rest of the roster look? I hate to be like this. I could not care less about how Jacoby Brissett looks. I
Yeah.
care about how the rest of the Patriots look because, again, that's going to impact potential decision making when it comes time for their franchise quarterback in Drake May.
Yeah, I wrote about this for Boston Sports Journal this week, the notion about the coaching staff. And I said, how the hell am I supposed to know what they are? We have no evidence. Gerard Mayo was a position coach who, yes, helped run the defensive meetings last couple of years, but like we don't know what sort of, I mean, talks about wanting to be physical, tough, running the football type team. But okay, now can you go out and execute it? Do you have the discipline with your players? And then Alex Van Pelt, who hasn't called play since 2009. It's an excellent teacher of quarterbacks. Anybody I've talked to, and I've talked to a million, praise him for that. But calling plays is a totally different ball game, and we'll see how that goes. Look, we love this the games everywhere, right? Like if I had a private jet, I'd be flying to Texas, Michigan, right? That I mean, a phenomenal game, a Big 10, Big 12, whatever the hell they call it now. I don't even know. And if you want to get great tickets, it's all about Game Time. They have a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And trust me, before I found Game Time, that's what I would do, and it would drive me absolutely insane. Will could not stand it. Just a fantastic way to go about your business. You just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Again, you're getting free money to go to a game. Terms apply. Again, create an account or redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, a guaranteed. Let's move on. Texans, Indianapolis. Intriguing game. I gotta say, I'm interested because we didn't get a ton of Anthony Richardson last year. There's a lot of hype around him and what that's going to look like. I want to flip it though, and the thing that sticks out to me about this game is can the Texans' offensive line, which is probably the weakest part of their entire team last year, can they hold up against an Indy pass rush that's been damn good? Even though Gus Bradley is a this is what we do defense, they've gotten good pass rush. You're talking about DeForest Buckner, Kwity Paye, and now your guy Latu, who I believe you picked as Defensive Rookie of the Year. And look, he is, if he stays healthy, he's a terrific pass rusher, by far and away the most polished guy as a pass rusher coming out in the draft, him and Austin Booker. But can that line hold up? Because CJ is great, the weapons are great. Like there's no question, we can't deny that. CJ's coming off a 4,100 yard, 23 touchdown, 5 pick season, but this team will get after you a little bit, and I'm curious beyond Laramie Tunsil if that line has gotten any better, if they're any more cohesive than they were last year. Because if they're not, I don't know. Indianapolis at home, no stretch to think that Indianapolis could win the game.
Yeah, a couple things you mentioned there. In terms of Richardson and a bunch of different things there, I'm curious in what the identity of the Colts is going to look like. Schematically, last year, obviously Minshew, when they had Richardson in there, Jonathan Taylor looks to be back to Jonathan Taylor. Steichen, who I predicted Coach of the Year. Obviously, we saw what it was like in Philly. Miles Sanders putting up 1,300 yards, 10 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Like this offensive line looks to be special again. They've got more weapons, AD Mitchell, et cetera. Just how are they going to utilize and how are they going to scheme up this offense? I assume against this scheme in Houston, which we've seen, the Jets in San Francisco, Seattle, they're going to try to pound the rock 35 times and use Richardson's legs, get him out in space, and try to have Jonathan Taylor just over and over and over again. So I'm curious from that perspective. And then Houston side, I'm just curious how they're going to deploy Derek Stingley. I think he's a guy who, outside of Sauce Gardner, is the next corner to get that big money. That's a younger player. Obviously, we'll talk about Jalen Ramsey. I'm pretty sure next or in 2 games here. How they deploy Derek Stingley? Like, do they just go, hey, you're going to take Mike Pitt the entire game? We
Right.
saw him in college, and man, like Derek Stingley is nasty, but the scheme's not really man heavy. So are they going to just sit back in three and quarters and just say, hey, like we trust you? Like, do they let him on AD Mitchell? I just schematically on both sides of the football, two teams that we know each other. There's that revenge factor last year. I think the Colts fans, players, people in that building you speak to, still pissed about the way that game ended and felt like
Yep.
that was right there for the taking. So schematically, I think this is a really Steichen, D'Amico. This is a pretty damn good game.
Yeah, I'm excited for this one for sure. You mentioned Jalen Ramsey. The Jaguars play at Miami, expected to be grotesquely
Hot.
hot there, but that's what you expect this time of the year. Before we get into the game, Jalen Ramsey gets it's a large extension, man. It's I don't, and I'm gonna just say, like, I don't. He's not the player he was with the Rams. He's not the same guy. And now that's not to say that he's not still really good, but they continue to just throw money around left and right. The big contract extensions for Tua, Tyreek, Jalen, uh, McDaniel got his contract. Like they think they're the greatest things since sliced bread.
Yeah, I get Jalen Ramsey. I would have like loved to see them just like give him a raise this year or some find a way to give him a raise this year. Maybe keep it a shorter deal. I think he's $55 million guaranteed, which again we'll see what kind of. He was already making I think 20 something this year. Like now
Yeah.
he's at 24.1, so obviously he's the highest paid corner in NFL history. You know, for now, again Stingley and Sauce will break that next year. We saw Surtain get extended. Jalen's 30, if I'm not mistaken. I know he could maybe go into that Charles Woodson role of playing some safety again, you know, as time goes on. But then you're paying a safety $24 million, and that's not a good business. You know, that's not probably the best business decision. I just feel like they went through this with Xavier Howard 2 years ago,
Yep.
and they're paying for it now. And Jason Fitzgerald, you know, over the cap, who's the best cap guy in the league, was just like, what? How did they not learn from their mistake with Xavier Howard? And again, it's nothing to do with Ramsey. Like, I think he's still a really good player, but he seems to getting hurt a lot more than he used to. And I just don't know that paying a 30-year-old corner. The Jets did this with Revis. They did it with Tremaine Johnson. We've seen the Dolphins do it with Xavier Howard. We saw the Eagles do it with Nnamdi Asomugha. Like, unfortunately, third contracts are never. It's really a fourth contract, but you know, third contracts just don't always go great. And to make them the highest paid and to give it to be a 3-year deal again, I have to see how the money's spread out, but feels like a bit of a reach. And in terms of the game, Miami always gets off the hot starts, hot weather, super fast team. Defensively, what are they going to look like? Again, new coordinator, new personnel. Just curious to see what that unit looks like. I know they're going to score points. We know they're going to score points. Yep. What's that unit going to look like? And then for Jacksonville, keeping it short and sweet here, like, who are they? Because again, John Jastrzemski made this point. I was listening to some of the stuff he was doing this morning, and he's like, they go 12-5 or 5-12, but I'd be shocked either way. And I was like, I'm going to take your point here. So I want to give John some credit here. I just don't know what they are. Seeing that almost beat Kansas City even with a limped Mahomes in the divisional round 12 months ago or 18 months. And then last year, like, choked the division away. So who are they? So I guess who are they? And then same thing with Miami's defense. Like, we know what the offense is going to be. That's the one staple we know. Other than that, in this game, I don't really know who Jacksonville or that Miami defense really is.
Yeah, I'm curious. Ryan Nielsen comes over. It's his first year with Jacksonville as a defensive coordinator. Comes over from Atlanta. Atlanta was a heavy man, press man team. 41.7% of the time they were in man last year. That was the third highest of any team. That's what he's bringing to Jacksonville. Can you live in man, press man against Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, some of the other pieces that they've added there? Because again, it's all about speed. They pick a couple guys in the draft, Malik Washington, that just bring crazy speed and playmaking ability. And he has Tyson Campbell. So there's one corner you trust. You know who the opposite corner is? Ronald Darby. You want to play man, press man with Ronald Darby against Jalen Waddle? I wouldn't want to do it. Darnell Savage is going to be the guy who's your nickel corner. Same thing. Like, I don't know. You get matchups there. You manipulate Hill into the slot or Waddle into the slot, and Savage is across him. Like, that's where the ball's going. So I would suggest if I was Ryan Nielsen, I come up with a new plan. Even though this is how I want to play, maybe today is not the day that we want to play that way. Let's go Cardinals and New Orleans Saints. Excuse me, not Cards. Who is it? Wait a minute. What did I do here? You're literally, who are the Saints playing?
Carolina.
Carolina. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. Sorry about that, people. I can't read my own writing. For this one, stands out to me is can Dave Canales, the new head coach, the offensive coordinator in Tampa, did a great job in Seattle as well with Geno Smith. Can he fix Bryce Young? We know they invested in the interior offensive line, but they averaged 13.9 points per game last year. That was tied with the Patriots for worst in the league. Bryce Young completed less than 60% of his passes. Like, it could get real ugly real fast in Carolina because people are just hanging on anyway. That team hasn't been good for a while. The owner's nuts. Like, there's a lot. And I like Bryce Young coming out, but he never has that one thing that separated him as a quarterback. He's a good athlete, but he's not a great athlete. He has a solid arm, but he doesn't have a great arm. And obviously he has the height limitations. So I'm just curious. I think New Orleans wins this game, but I'm just curious, do we get a more improved passable version of Bryce Young?
Yeah, I think people are really down on New Orleans, and I am too. I just think that this defense was able to carry them in this game, and it's going to be ugly. It's not going to be fun. It's going to be a game. It's like the words Bill Simmons, a poop fecta game. It's like,
yeah,
this isn't great. But I think it's important New Orleans gets off on a hot start here at home. I think everyone's down on them like Derek Carr, and I'm sure their own fans are. Like, you got to – Derek Carr and Dennis Allen need a win against probably one of the easier games in their schedule. And in Carolina, they get that new coach bump. Does Bryce look a little rejuvenated? They look a little spunky game one. If they want to steal some games, this is, again, one you could steal. So I think on both sides of the ball, like, this New Orleans defense is the best unit of the four. But outside of that, like, you don't really feel great about anything else. Yeah. And also, the only last thing here, and again, we'll keep it short here, but Alvin Kamara, like, what is he now? It's been a little while since I feel like we've seen prime Kamara, and it's not even like he just hasn't like played a lot. I feel like he hasn't played a lot. They haven't used him correctly. He had the legal stuff. Just what kind of guy? Who are we going to see this year in 2024?
Vikings at Giants, and there's a story in the Athletic by Dan Duggan, who does a great job. Dan wrote about Brian Daboll, who is going to call the plays this year. Now he'd taken over the duties at points last season, apparently, according to various reports from Mike Kafka, but kept giving it back to Kafka. But after a 6-11 season in which the Giants were at the bottom of the league in most offensive categories, and look, it didn't help that Daniel Jones was hurt twice, including the season ender, but he wasn't playing well even prior to that. But it makes sense because there's some heat now on Daboll, just 1 year removed from being coach of the year. Like, this can't go that way again, because if it does, he might be the next in line of the Giants coaches who don't get a lot of time to get the job done there and get blown out. So I understand what he's doing here. I think he'll make Daniel Jones better. I think Brian's in his sweet spot when he's calling plays. I think one of the things that what Dan wrote about was, talking to different players that have played for him over time, that, his play sheet, he has like a designed for guys. Like, there's parts of it. It's like, well, if Malik gets hot, Malik Neighbors, who obviously I think we think is going to have a fantastic year, assuming Daniel Jones can get on the ball. But it's like, if Malik's gets hot, I have these lists of 15 plays that I can call where I think the ball's supposed to go to him. And like, a lot of guys will tell you, like, for coaches, Matt Barkley was talking about it, like, they've never seen that before. Like, a coach, like, literally putting this little column in here, like, I want to feed this ball to this guy. This is how I'm going to do it. So, look, the Giants, last time they played the Vikings was a postseason game. They beat the Vikings in there, but that was pre-Brian Flores. That was when the Giants were riding high. Just, Jones is playing well in his first year under Daboll. So I'm just curious to see what that looks like because, again, last year was a disaster for the Giants.
Yeah, I think the two things I'm looking for, Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson. Jefferson's talked up Sam a lot. We've seen a lot of good stuff out of Sam this preseason. Some, it's kind of what we see with Sam. So Justin Jefferson, I picked him for Offensive Player of the Year, and I'm curious, and the Giants secondary is their biggest issue. I don't know, is he going to get 25 targets? 20? I'm not, it sounds like I'm dead serious.
No.
Is he getting 20 targets on Sunday? And that's probably the way they win. And then from a Giants perspective, I know the question marks are around Daniel Jones, and rightfully so. You mentioned a little bit, what's Brian Flores do with Malik Neighbors? Because outside of Neighbors, no one else on that offense, I don't feel like puts that fear in you. And Neighbors a rookie. It's his first game. He's talked, him and Isaiah Simmons, his goals this year are less than 3 drops, 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, all pro, the whole thing. That's great, and I get it. Does Flores run cover one? Does he, do a lot of the blitzing? Is he sit in zone and have Gilmore just be in his stuff all game and just physical with him and have a guy over the top? Again, not to nerd out here schematically, I'm just curious what they do with Neighbors. And then on the opposite side, Justin Jefferson. O'Connell's great. Jefferson's healthy. Darnold loves to lock on to one guy. That guy will be Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I think I read a stat where since O'Connell's taken over, they average 38 passes a game. Will he throw the ball 38 or more times with Sam Darnold? That'll be an interesting one to look at. How about a Raiders Chargers? Chargers know the team that a lot of people, because of the Jim Harbaugh factor and the 3 or 4 win bump that he gives pretty much any team that he's ever taken over from college all the way through the pros back to college with Michigan. We talked about this in our preview, though, about their offensive line. They add Alt. You have Slater on the other side. This is a group. They want to be bullies. Well, the Raiders have a terrific defensive front. They have 2 of the best defensive players, quite frankly, and Christian Wilkins on the inside, Max Crosby on the outside. Can this offensive line neutralize those guys? Because if they do, the Raiders, who I think are in for a long season, are going to have a long one in the opener against LA.
Yeah, my 2 things here: pass rush from the Chargers. Pass rush from the Raiders, and the offensive line from the Chargers. You mentioned it there. Chargers going to want to run the rock a million times. They want to be physical. They're going to want to beat you up in the trenches. We love what they've done in the offseason in terms of addressing that offensive line, in addition to what they had there previously, mentality from Harbaugh. Christian Wilkins, Max Crosby, it's a pretty damn good duo, and not to mention, they've got a bunch of other guys out there as well. So can they get after Herbert a little bit coming off the foot, put them in third and longs, second and longs, third and mediums, where you can't just run the rock on 3rd and 4. That'll be an interesting one there. So again, that and the revenge factor, not only the Harbaugh point, but no one in the city respects you, and this is a Raiders town still, and they ran the score up on Easton Stick 63-7 or whatever that was last year. Sure, Harbaugh's harped on that quite a few times, so that's what I'm watching for there.
Unquestionably. Denver at Seattle. Did you know in the last 5 seasons, rookie quarterbacks starting in their first game are 0-7-1? That leads me to Bo Nix, who was named the starter and is a captain for the Denver Broncos in his rookie season. And look, you and I saw him at the Senior Bowl. I like Bo Nix. I don't love Bo Nix, but Bo Nix had a really nice preseason. 23 of 30, led him to 3 touchdowns, 3 field goals, and they had 1 fumble in his 7 drives during the postseason. That's pretty damn productive. 2 touchdown passes. Seattle, Mike McDonald on the other side. We know his reputation. He's a defensive guru. The first 4 games of Nick's, his career, by the way, McDonald, Mike Tomlin, Todd Bowles, and Robert Saleh. Those are his first 4 games. So welcome to the league, kid. You're playing 4 of the better defensive coaches in the National Football League. What's it look like? And it's also in Seattle. Those people are going to be nuts. It's a new coach. It's a new era. Can Bo Nix and Sean Payton, can they handle what they're about to see? Because it's going to be different than anything he saw in college, and it's going to certainly be different than anything he saw in the preseason.
Yeah, I think Bo Nix is obviously the easy one there. I'm curious about Javonte Williams. What's he look like a year now? It's almost 24 months removed from the major reconstructive knee surgery. They're going to need him. They throw the ball to running backs more than any team in the league, under Sean Payton. What's Javonte Williams going to look like? And then Seattle, you mentioned the defense. What's Geno going to look like this year? I think we've led the league in completion percentage 2 years ago. They were a really fun story. Went 9-8. Then last year, 8-9. Geno gets banged up a little bit. The Drew Lock game against Philly, and there's not as much lore around Geno. Get off to a quick start, I think, under McDonald, and they're a serious playoff contender, as you mentioned. During our NFC West preview. I'm not quite as high on Denver, and we remember this was the Nate Hackett, Russell Wilson debut game a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Again, Sean Payton, a lot of years removed now from those prime Breeze years, even 2020, the 2020 year with Payton. So a lot of question marks in both places. I think both teams kind of need to get a nice start here.
Yeah, no question. Cowboys At Cleveland, Tom Brady's debut.
Let me
For
start
the
on this one. I'm curious because I don't want to. I have two. I only have two things on this
yeah,
game.
do it.
Browns home versus road. At home, that defense has been special.
Yeah,
On the road, they're not very good, and Dallas has looked like it seemed like an utter dumpster fire all off season. Everyone's kind of leaning on the Browns of like, oh, this is a perfect spot, and it might be. I also just feel like we're going to see like a Dallas team where we're like, oh yeah, they've won 36 games or 39 games in the last three regular
yeah.
seasons. And the only other point, and I'll quickly turn it over to you because I know we're trying to keep these games quick, and all of a sudden we're almost at an hour already. Deshaun Watson makes it through four quarters. Like, no, it's because he
Yeah,
just
no, it's it. No,
not
I
just
laughed.
playing; he's hurt all the
He's
time.
played 12 games since he got there. It's part of that was a suspension, but part of it's been injuries. What I was gonna say is, and as a road game too, starting a rookie left tackle in Guyton, Cooper Beebe is going to start at center for the Cowboys. Uh, I seem to recall last year at various points, Jim Schwartz moving around Myles Garrett. We know the crossover dribble thing he did. He was coming through the interior. Like, don't tell me that Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett aren't going to be moving around, and
Oh yeah,
and that Jim Schwartz is going to be isolating those two kids and saying, "Can you hold up to crowd noise?" And I mean, Myles is one of the best players in football. Can they hold up? I think it's a hell of a challenge. It's a hell of a first week for those two guys because Schwartz will bring a whole bunch of crap in their general direction. Commanders at the Bucks. So here's what I'll say about this one. Baker's been good in 3 of his 7 seasons in the league. 2018, his rookie year, 2020, and then last season.
oh, the due for a little regression.
Is he due for a regression, or did he finally find a home? Now, granted, they have an offensive coordinator change, so there's a little bit there that he's going to have to work through. But he's worked with Liam Cohen before. But I'm just like, because if Baker is what he was last year, then the notion that for me that Atlanta is just like was the easiest pick to make of any of the division winners, even though again I don't think Atlanta's good, that would change it. Because if Baker is Baker of last year, then Tampa Bay will be right there all season.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels obviously is right. I think it's the number one storyline from Washington perspective. I picked him for rookie there because I think he's going to put up. He's going to get to throw the rock, and that's how that's going to work. I'm not really overly curious about the additions they made veteran wise, just because I think I mentioned this in the NFC spot. I think a lot of those guys we got to sign somebody and we got to build some type of culture here, and we know they're not the same player. From a Tampa's perspective, again, just I guess kind of what are they? Because I felt like a year ago it was kind of like kind of moseying along a little bit, and they got hot, and then the Eagles blew their doors off, and they were like, they're not very good. And then like they got hot at the end of the year, they demolished Philly, and then they could have beat Detroit. Even though I felt like I said it, like I knew Detroit would win that game, it just
they hung with them.
They hung with them. So are you the team that like is more of a 7-win team? Anything can happen on any given Sunday, or are you like, no, you're legit. We're a good team last year. Jason Licht's transformed that from the oldest roster in the league that won a title. They have the youngest roster in the league now. This is the Bucs should win this game. I think if you're the Bucs and you lose to a rookie quarterback at home, coming down to 90-degree heat with a first-time head coach, you'd feel pretty crappy about your chances going, weeks 2 through 4.
Could be a sneaky fun game. Just
sneaky. Oh, I think it's gonna be very fun.
Yeah, and then probably the game over the weekend. We have the Rams at the Lions. It's Sunday Night Football. You are incredibly high on the
Way
Rams.
Way too high on the Rams.
No, I respect it. You made some good points there. I guess to me, and we talked about this during our playoff picks and preview as well. Can the Lions defense be what Aaron Glenn wants it to be? He wants to play man. He wants to get in people's faces. He wants to be aggressive. He didn't have the personnel secondary-wise to do that largely last year, and yet they still came within a whisker of going to the Super Bowl. They had Carlton Davis. They draft Terry and Arnold. They draft Enos Rakestraw, who might not be as much of a factor early as he may be later or even next year, but clearly giving him the personnel pieces that he wants. And look, you're going to face a guy in McVay who he'll attack you in a bunch of different ways. He'll manipulate personnel. There's talk about them playing more 2 tight ends this year. So he'll challenge them from that regard. But I know how Aaron wants to play, and I'm curious if they feel like the picks that they made, the acquisitions that they made, allow him to do that, because this is a great game to sort of see it with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua on the other side. Like, okay, let's see what you got.
Yeah, there's been comments a lot all offseason, not just from the Rams. There's a lot of been, the Lions put Kirby Joseph was dirty, and, the Lions play a little dirty. They talked about there's a lot of expectations, and there's a lot of went from the fun team to, it always flips. You go from the fun team, the underdog, and you almost get there, and then, you start to become the team that everyone's kind of rooting against. How are they going to handle that pressure? And the Rams, obviously, revenge from last year. I think that was the best game probably of the season last year. That wild card game was fantastic. The energy in that building was special. My bold take was Matt Stafford wins MVP and retires, and the Rams go to the title game. So I kind of need the Rams to get out to a hot start here. But I think all eyes are on Fisk, Verse, and that young Rams defense. Extremely young defense. There's a lot of talent there, but a lot of guys they've developed and young and all these different these different pieces. So we'll see. I expect this game to be absolutely special, and one of those games where you go, football is goddamn back.
Yes, I'm ecstatic. I'm all fired up about it. Will, a pleasure. We will talk again on Monday when we'll recap the weekend's games and preview the 49ers and the Jets. You can barely contain your enthusiasm for that. Thank you for watching or listening, however you get it, your podcast. As always, a reminder to leave a review, subscribe, tell your friends. It certainly helps us build the brand here of the All 32 Pod. I think we're about 10, 12 episodes deep here, but we're just getting warmed up for you, so we appreciate you playing along.
It is caught! Touchdown! The New England Patriots select Drake May.